BBC Radio.
Music News.
6 Music.
Music News with Matt.
Right, onto a rather brilliant meeting of musical minds. Now, as we reported a few weeks back, at the start of the month, Paul McCartney re-released his 2 post-Wing solo albums, Tug of War, which came out originally in 82, and Pipes of Peace, which came out in 83. Really strong records. They both feature some classic Macca tracks. There's his duets with Stevie Wonder, Ebony and Ivory, his Say 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 with Michael Jackson, which is just amazing, and proper Macca classics like Take It Away, Wonderwall, Tug of War, as well as Paul's John Lennon tribute, Here Today, is on the Tug of War album, as that was being written around the time that John Lennon was killed. And both albums also saw Paul reunited with Beatles producer George Martin. Now, James Dean Bradfield from the Manic Street Preachers, obviously a huge Paul McCartney fan, that's no surprise to anyone, but especially those albums, especially Tug of War. He's talked about when he was really small and quite a nerdy kid, he found something in the emotional content of those records, and he was obsessed with melody. He's talked about the fact that it was because the melodies in those albums are so strong, as with so much Macca stuff. So someone came up with a brilliant idea of putting together Sir Paul McCartney and James Dean Bradfield in the same room to get them to talk about those records, as James is so close to them and they mean so much to him, and his life as a musician and what inspired him to start writing songs in the first place. So here is some of that rather brilliant interview.
Love, I'm gonna pick you up in the morning. Love, I'm gonna take you out on a journey.
There's so many songs on the first side of Pipes of Peace. It seems to be dealing in quite emotionally fragile and vulnerable issues. Did it feel like that at a time? Did it feel like a fraught personal time for you?
I never know what I'm going to write about.
Yeah.
So I think there is a kind of psychological aspect of just what mood you're in.
Yeah.
You know, early on when we started writing, we used to say it's like a psychiatrist. You know, you're talking to your guitar, you're sort of telling your problems to your guitar, and it comes out as a song. And sometimes it gets disguised along the way, you know, with a nice bit of melody or with some optimism along with the pessimism or whatever. But tell you the truth, I never think about it.
No.
So it's sort of just the mood of what I'm in that day. I don't actually start by thinking, okay, you know, this is going to address a dark mood, or it's going to address a dark subject. I find myself just putting what's in me into the song.
Yeah.
So often sometimes don't even know what I've written.
Love, I'm gonna pick you up. I'm gonna take you out.
By this age, I was thinking of buying my first guitar, etc. And I was so desperate to write just melodies. Actually, I didn't even care about songs at that point.
Yeah.
I think the first thing I hooked upon as a potential tunesmith was I was trying to understand in my head if you and Michael Jackson, you know, actually wrote together face to face or by correspondence on Say Say and The Man.
Say, say, say what you want, but don't play games with my affection. Take what you need, but don't leave me with no direction. All alone.
How did you actually write those songs?
Michael originally rang me, said, do you want to make some hits? I didn't know who it was. I didn't recognize his voice at first.
Yeah.
Anyway, I got into it and I said, yeah, sure I do, you know. So he came over, we agreed to meet here, and went upstairs. There's a little piano upstairs and here. We just sat around. I had a guitar and a piano, and we just said, right, so what should we do? So we just started, like you do. Yeah, it came very easily.
Yeah.
No, because I was quite excited to write with him. He was quite excited to write with me. So we were popping off each other.
Yeah.
And so we just did it. As I say, it was quite a short session, and we were in the same room, face to face.
Surprised. I thought it was going to be a correspondence thing.
No, it was live. Yeah, we should just did it, and I just wrote the lyrics down, you know, and said, okay, that's it.
And if you leave, the pain will go, but that's no good to me. Girl, I love you. Yes, I love you so bad.
You talked about rehabilitating the reputation of George Martin a tiny bit. Does it feel like serendipity that you started working with him again at this point, kind of thing?
It's always good to work with George, but it was really great on this album to get back together again.
No, he almost sounds like he's telling you don't be scared to be you.
Yeah.
It's you. That's
Well,
like
that's
the start of Pipes piece. It is very reminiscent of the Beatles, and there is bits on Throw a Love, which is, and why would you ever hide that?
Yeah.
You know? It sounds like he's encouraging that.
Well, I think so, because I say at the end of the Beatles, it was all a bit sticky, and George got a bit sidelined.
Yeah.
And I think John said a few sort of things about him he didn't mean. And I remember John saying to me later, he said, I didn't mean that, I was just mouthing off. But it got out in print that, George Martin was maybe not as good as he cracked up to be. And we all knew he was. So when I got back together with him, it was just a delight to see the old mate, who I thought was so clever and so skilled, and the great person to have in the room. If you're making a song, and you want a decision, you think, am I singing this good?
Yeah.
I mean, I remember worrying about countless vocals, but am I singing any good? He'd go, this is good, don't worry.
One of my other questions, it's an amazing vocal performance on the entire record, but did it shock you how close texturally your voice was to Jacko's voice? Did you have a problem trying to separate them? Because when you're singing
with
together,
Michael,
your voice was so close.
Particularly on the new mix,
it's insane.
You can't tell, kind of thing. We when we were writing it, we were both in this sort of little sort of vibe.
Yeah.
Oh, God, hey. We were both. Well, that's kind of how he sings anyway. Yeah. So I was kind of going along with that. I didn't want to suddenly go say, and he's doing the little voice. So I like doing that little voice as well. So we were very similar. But I must agree on the new mix. We've actually got on the record. We're going to have to say Michael, Paul,
on the man,
you can't tell. Once you know,
you
go, oh yeah.